What's good with y'all, man? My name is Tej, and in this video I'm gonna be showing y'all how to make an aggressive Baton Rouge beat for NBA YoungBoy and other Baton Rouge artists that use similar beats. I made this beat from scratch, so I'm gonna be showing y'all my whole process of making the sample and adding drums to it. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy these types of videos, be sure to hit subscribe. And if you want to see the latest on these videos or anything else I'm working on, be sure to follow me on Instagram at beatsbytej. As always, I'll have the finished beat played at the end of the video, and I think I've said enough, so let's just hop into the sample. These samples are typically more up-tempo, so typically the tempo of these probably sit within like 155 or 170 beats per minute. For this one specifically, I use 164. For my first melody sound, I got this grand piano preset from Keyscape. To be honest, you could just use any grand piano preset that you have. I just prefer to use this one. So hopping into our main MIDI here, you're probably looking at this, and this is probably a whole lot just being thrown at you at once, but I'll go in and break down each of the individual components. It'll make a little more sense. So overall, this pattern is pretty repetitive. I think I only ended up making the first 4 measures and then just duplicated it for the rest of the pattern, but I mainly just started with these bass notes down here. So just by itself, the bass notes sound like this. And the bass notes of your piano tend to set the tone for the rest of the pattern. As you can kind of tell, they're played in faster succession compared to other beats, and they're also shorter notes, so they don't decay as long, because if they decayed longer, it'd sound kind of weird, so it would sound like this. And that just sounds really weird, and it just doesn't mix well with all the other sounds. So the key that I chose for this sample is F sharp minor, and I just used the different scale degrees. Mostly I'm just using the first note, the 5th, 6th, and 4th note in the scale, and those are pretty much all the notes I was using in this one. And once I had those, I selected all of them, held shift and click on the notes to duplicate them, and then hit control up arrow and copied them up by 1 octave. And then so as you can see, some of these overlap with the notes up here, and then some of them don't. I ended up trimming out some of the notes here. I ended up keeping a good number of them, and using that, I just constructed the chords for the top melody. I'm just using those same bass notes as my root notes for these chords, and then just using the F sharp minor scale to kind of flesh out the rest of the notes. And then finally, I just have the top melody. For the most part, this just corresponds with the notes and the chords in the middle part of this pattern, but just in different octaves, or just using these as like lead-ins or accents for some of the other notes. I routed that to a mixer track, and I put this EQ on it. All I did was just cut a little bit of these low mids around 300 hertz just to cut out a little bit of the muddiness and clean up the sound a little bit. So for my next melody sound, I opened up Trillion, and I got this bass guitar preset. Similar to the first piano preset, you could just use whichever bass guitar preset you have. I just chose this one. And for the most part, this is just a simplified version of the piano bass notes, and also similar to the piano notes, these bass notes are also short. They don't sustain for very long. Next, I opened up Analog Lab, and I got this Church Chords preset, which is an organ preset, and I put in this organ pattern here. I'll just start with the 2 chords that I chose. For this chord right here, it's just a normal F sharp minor chord, and then I just moved the first note up by 1 octave. And this one's just the F sharp minor chord, but with the root note in the original spot. And so for these notes down here, I just wanted these to kind of rise into our top chord just to make it sound like you're kind of running up the piano. I went to the snap to grid setting up here, and I went to the 1/2 step snapping, and I just penciled in 8 notes here and used the notes in the F sharp minor scale and pretty much just ran up the scale until I got to my chord. And I did the same thing over here. Instead of just going directly up, I went kind of up and down between steps and repeated a couple notes. Oh, and also for the lead-in notes, you want to rise them up in velocity. and I routed that organ sound to a mixer track and I put on a couple effects. The first thing I put on was this low cut EQ. Then I put on RC20 on the Vinyl 1 preset and made a couple adjustments to some of the knobs. And now we get into the fun part of the beat, which is all of the accents. So I'll kind of group the first three into one. So I have this brass stab, and that hits on the first beat of the first measure. And then I have this guitar wah, and also pitch that one into key, and that hits on the first beat of the fifth measure. And then I have this accent.
What?
And I put that into key, and that hits on the first beat of the first and fifth measures. So I'm just gonna play all of those together with the pattern. So once I had the accents that hit on the first beats of those initial measures of the 4-bar patterns, I put this sound into the channel rec. Again, pitched it to key. And I put these on the first beat of the third and the seventh measures. And for my last accent, I put on this guitar stab. And this hits on the third beat of the fourth and eighth measures. And when it comes to arranging these accents, there isn't really a specific spot where the accents should go and which one should go where. You can just experiment on the placement of them and which ones you use. As long as it sounds good, you should be good. And also for all the accent sounds, I used a Baton Rouge. I don't know which drum kit I used, so I couldn't leave you guys a link, but hopefully that's enough to get y'all in the right direction. So I imported my loop into a new project file, and I set the project tempo to 164 beats per minute. I went into the audio clip settings for the loop, and I changed the mode to stretch, and then pitched it down by 100 cents. The key that the 808 and the drums are in are F minor. And then I got started on the drums. The first sound that I put in was this consistent clap from my introspection drum kit, and just laid out a pretty standard clap pattern. The only adjustment that I made to this is that I put a clap on the end of the first beat on the fourth and eighth measures. Next, I put in my first of two hi-hat patterns. So this one is a little bit more complicated than the second one. With this one, you can kind of tell I went in and manually put in each of the notes and adjusted the velocities and all that. For the most part, it kind of looks like it resembles a two-step pattern, but it doesn't really sound like it because there's so many fluctuations in velocity. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that I like to change my velocities up to add bounce to my hi-hats. In terms of note placement, it follows just the normal grid lines, and then I just added a couple of smaller rolls at the end here. And on the hi-hats, I put some effectrix on it. I put the reverse on the 9th beat here, and I put the reverb on the last two on the 1/8 tempo setting. And then after that, I put in my second hi-hat pattern. Like I said, it's simpler than the first one. It's literally just a two-step with the same 8 notes just played over and over again, except for the end, which is just a roll that plays on all of the grid lines on the normal line setting. And this sound is also routed to the same channel as the previous hi-hats, so that's why you're hearing the effectrix effects on it. Next, I put in my snare pattern, and I kept this pretty simple because my 808 and my open hats take up a lot of space. And then next, I put in my open hat sound. This sound's a shorter open hat. I wanted to leave as much room for the other drum sounds as much as possible because we already have a lot of accents and components of the melodic part in the sample. For the most part, this open hat hits in a pretty typical spot, and then I just put in this little accent one for the third one. And then I put in my second open hat pattern, which just hits along with the 808. And lastly, the 808. And similar to the bass guitar and the lower piano notes, most of the 808 notes don't decay for very long. And to get your 808s to cut off as soon as the note ends, you go into your audio clip settings, you go to this menu right here, go to the envelope, you turn all your knobs down and the hold all the way up. With all that being said, this is what the 808 pattern sounds like. So that's gonna do it for me. Hope y'all enjoyed the video, found it helpful, and were able to take something away from it. Let me know what you'd like to see me do next in the comments, and feel free to leave any feedback. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe. And that's gonna do it for me. Thank you for watching. Peace.
Roll up, Tess.